Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show. Mark, welcome to the Principal Podcast. Happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Let's jump straight into it. What's the story? Mark, what got you into consulting and what led you to build Skeleton Key into the business it is today?
So I got into consulting, honestly, because the pay and the hours were a lot better. My background was in theater, technical theater and design, and the hours for that are notoriously after hours, late on weekends, late on evenings, for very low pay, at least back when I was doing this in college and just after college. I had some technical and IT background, and so I had an opportunity to expand on that and sort of bluff my way into positions at a much better rate of pay and much better hours. And it just kind of took off from there. When I finally got around to, not just dabbling at various companies, working in IT security and networking and storage and creative workflows, all along the way, I was tinkering with software and building little apps and solutions for people to solve certain problems. And I was very, very good at learning new things quickly, and decided, and I had too much work. Basically, I was making clients wait or looking for help. Decided to do what a lot of small business owners do, write a business plan, a really bad one, as it turns out, to make this a formal business. This was back in 2000. I think it took me a couple of years to figure all that out and officially find the right domain, find the right name, establish the business with a license in 2002, and effectively go from being a solo shop to being a multi-person team, and have never stopped learning how to figure out how to run my business ever since then.
Love it. All this leading to what? What is the problem that you help people solve today?
So we help companies get unstuck and improve how they do their work to create more value and to sustain that improvement over time. So what that typically looks like is we redesign the business processes. Might be some small tweaks, might be some major changes, and the systems, the technology, the workflows behind them. Usually where they've outgrown or they've just always done it that way, but it's inefficient, or they can't see what's going on in real time, or there's a lot of steps to interact with external parties like customers and suppliers. And we effectively look at all of that and map a different way of doing it to leverage the technologies and what works and to get rid of the waste.
I love when the positioning is that crystal clear. Who is it that you help, Mark? Who is it that you help eliminate the waste?
So, I mean, in terms of the type of customers and type of industries, or in types of users, I can answer all three. Is there one particular aspect of that you want, or all of them?
Give us all three. And that's usually the follow-up question you ask. Who do you help versus who do you need to get a decision from versus who is it really ending up using your service? So give us the whole shebang.
Right. So if we look at a pinwheel of the industries we serve, it's just a rainbow of colors. We have clients in almost every industry you can imagine. And I don't know if that's really served us really well. That's probably a different topic, but we've been more generalists than specialists. And in part, that's because what we're specializing is in business workflow. A lot of the different businesses we serve, manufacturing, construction, professional services, lower ed, higher ed, private education, governments, public bodies, you name it. I can't even remember all the industries we've been in. They effectively have people working with information from inception to completion, whether it's a product or a service that they're fulfilling. There's a lot more that we've found to be similar between companies than there is dissimilar. And then, of course, there are very unique things and concepts that might only apply to, a printing and packaging company or a metal fabricating company or a roofing company. But a lot of the basic stuff is the same across these companies. They've got people working with information through processes, trying to get stuff done and needing access to the information at the right time with the least number of clicks or touches. So when the work we do tends to attach to the individual contributors, right? Whether it's an owner operator who's also the head salesperson or maybe the best craftsman, or whether it is we're serving the ownership team by making improvements to the way that their operations team runs and works with the tools they have. And every client's different. We have Fortune 500 clients where we're working with a cross-functional team of 300 people across 10 departments. We've got very large industry companies in the architecture and engineering space, the kinds of companies that build nuclear dams and gasoline refineries. We're working with 6 people in an innovation team. So it really runs the gamut. But we also have like a local company that does electrical service for commercial roofers. We're working with a private school up the street that does K through 12 special needs. Like, it's all over the place. And the use cases are as varied as the clientele.
I love this. And at the same time, I can't help but think, okay, but then how do you brand? How do you market? How do you get the attention of the different decision makers within those different verticals, Mark? All whilst educating the end user and maybe the head of the team that is actually going to benefit from all this. How do you think about branding, marketing, and getting the attention of the right people when you have such a variety of people you can help?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that we're still figuring out. Although I think we've gotten much more clarity over the last couple of years. So what's interesting about us when we compare ourselves to peers in our particular space that we are in peer groups with and such is that we have historically as a company under-invested in marketing and sales. We didn't, other than a website and some of the basics, we didn't curate a newsletter. We didn't have a LinkedIn or any kind of ad-based presence of any kind. We didn't focus a lot of attention and energy on SEO. And even in the last few years, when we've refined our messaging and for clarity and who we are and what makes us tick and who we serve, our early attempts to communicate outbound to those ICPs were not creating results. And I think what we've realized is, as we look at the data of where our deals and leads come from, is that most of them come from 2 places. They're coming from referral partnerships. They're coming from people who serve companies like us, but who don't do what we do. That could be managed IT service companies who focus on the infrastructure and on the desktops and on the basic software and use cases, but they don't build custom integrations. They don't build custom applications. They don't really get into workflow. And are you guys working the right way? They just make sure that whatever they're using stays up and that they're ahead of the curve in terms of not getting caught, with a security incident or something like that. I know MSPs do a lot more than that, but they stay in their lane most of the time and they don't focus on process and workflow as much as infrastructure. Similarly, there are fractional CFOs or fractional COOs or fractional sales leaders who get into a team, look at how the things are operating, and they identify waste and inefficiency, but they don't necessarily implement solutions. Maybe they go and find something off the shelf and pull it down and say, let's try using this, but they know the good ones well enough to say, there's a problem here, here's what it would be worth to solve that problem. Now let's find an expert. And so I have invested over the last few years a lot of time not trying to get our message out to say, hey, we solved these problems for your industry, which we had done in the past, like I said, with very little results. Because often companies, I think, our clients, they don't even know how to articulate what the problem is. They just know something isn't working. So they're not necessarily using the language that we might use to search for it and find us. If they might just be suffering. But if we spend time participating in peer groups, I'm thinking groups like EO or Vistage or Tab, some of the mastermind type groups that put together different businesses. I'm in a few of those. So these are not just groups for networking. These are business improvement groups where peers help each other. And in the process, they get to know what you do as a service and you help them understand how to see a client who could benefit from that introduction. And that leads to opportunities. I also do speaking. I speak on the Vistage circuit. I speak at local events here in the St. Louis area or sometimes in regional conferences or even up into Canada and try to bring some of the techniques I've learned over the years about selling and engaging with clients and helping them articulate the problems and the value of solving them. I try to share that knowledge in the hopes that it is beneficial to the participants and they might see some spark of interest in talking to me afterwards. that has been the most effective so far. So now we're really focusing our marketing efforts on how do we amplify those centers of influence? How do we find more of those referral partners, more of those opportunities to help businesses improve? And in doing so, attract them to us for more conversations, deeper conversations about how to actually implement those improvements.
I want to follow up on one of the things that you mentioned, because I think this is something that a lot of professional service firms will relate to, right? So, I mean, most of the players out there starts kind of by accident, because a former employer, a colleague, someone who knows them and trusts them is like, hey, I have this job for you. My company is searching for this. So, hey, we need you to continue the work that, you left because you were pursuing other opportunities whatsoever. And here comes the first consulting gig. And then the next one and the next one, from word of mouth, basically. Not thinking really about marketing for the first few years is typical, just because professional services don't need to in the first few years. You're figuring out the product, the service, and you're getting business from word of mouth. It's when we are looking at ramping up a clear positioning that it makes more sense. So what made you look into it, invest into it clearly? I mean, being that active within the Vistage space is clearly marketing, EU, and so on, and overall branding and like relationship building, right? So what made you take the leap, Mark? What made you think, okay, I need to invest my time, which is literally the most valuable resource of consultants out there, into developing a brand and a marketing strategy?
I'm thinking it has to do probably in part with my age. I'll be 58 in a few days.
When?
I was July 8th, literally in 2 days.
Oh, okay, cool. 12 here. So we could have almost had a joint anniversary. Sorry, please continue.
Sure. So a few years ago, after I sold the IT firm, which is just a division of the main company, and started thinking about, okay, now how is the future going to look for the company? I've been in other peer groups and watching some of my peers grow much faster than we were. We were always growing 5 to 10% a year and incrementally getting bigger, but we were not seeing some of the hockey stick growth that they were seeing, even though they were in professional services. And I knew that they were investing a lot. They had built content engines. They were investing in paid advertising. They were diversifying their platforms and their channels, and that was part of the way that they were fueling their growth. But we hadn't done those things yet, and it seemed like a fortune to have to do that. But as I started looking at my where I was in my life, how many years until I would be, let's say, done or ready to move on to what's next, the age of my sons, I have 4 sons, and their needs with college, and how do I be available to them as they get older and move into their families, I started thinking about, what do I want to get done here in the next 10 years? That eventually led me to EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which we were already an open book company. We were familiar with the advantage from Patrick Lencioni. We had looked at different models and frameworks we could use as not frameworks to run the business, but scaffolding for which we could attach some key concepts and ideas that were missing. And one of the things EOS challenges you do is to have a core target 10 years out. And a 3-year goals and 1-year goals. And these were not disciplines we had ever had as a company. And so me sitting down with my leadership team and myself and saying, what do I want us to be in 10 years? What do I want to leave, not as a legacy for me, but we're a group of people working together. None of my children have expressed an interest in coming and getting involved in this industry or in this business. How do I set my team up for success when I'm out of the day-to-day? To either run this thing, buy it from me, or some hybrid of the two. And that felt to me that it was really necessary for us to solve 2 things. One of them was we had to be able to consistently create demand or find customers to create new pipeline. And the other was, I think, equally important, which was we had to find a way to keep existing customers engaged so that we can keep generating new opportunities with our existing clients, which are certainly the least expensive clients to acquire. They've already been acquired. And we had pretty good retention, but we did not have a way to monetize that, and we did not have a way to consistently do it. So there was a hole in the boat. We were losing engagement with a certain number of clients every year, so we had to sell new ones and bring in new ones. If we could plug some of that hole up and have better retention and sustain long-term relationships with clients on purpose, while also putting new clients in, then we should be able to much more steadily grow at more like a 12 or 15% per year, which is really what I want to do. And I think it was that challenge in EOS to say, what do you want to be like in 10 years? What does this company look like then? That forced me to get a little bit more ambitious.
Love that. Talk to me about how we translate this branding, this vision, to speaking engagements, this network, those relationships into a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement with rock and roll. What does sales motion look like for you, Mark?
Sure. So there is some channel activity where we get introduced to people by channel partners, platforms, and things that we develop in. There are spontaneous people who fill out our web form because they find us because, I don't know, some magic on our website happened to put us in their orbit. But regardless of whether it's that or I go speak somewhere or I've got a referral partnership with someone, it starts with a conversation with the client, where they might come in, as a lot of clients do, with we need X, Y, or Z, or we need this problem to be solved this way. Sometimes, and almost every client does, they come in with a self-diagnosis and a prescription for what they need. And my sales motion really for me begins there because the sales motion upstream of that, like I said, I'm thinking as marketing versus the sales activity. For me, it's about having a really solid set of conversations. And these conversations for me have evolved over the last few years. I have 2 or 3 meetings with the client, and the conversation is almost completely around 3 primary topics. What are the problems you're having? What's not working? How do you know that's a problem? What evidence do you have right now for that? What's the KPI or the metric or the result that you see that indicates this sales problem is happening, this data flow happening, this rework on the manufacturing floor is happening? Do you have some idea of the root cause, of why that metric is so bad, and like what it might take, not the solution, but what kind of intervention might be necessary, or how much better could it get? So I kind of call these things, there's the problem, there's the signal, and there's the impact if it was solved. We don't know how we're going to solve it yet. There's probably dozens of ways we could. Maybe we're not the right company to help you solve it. Maybe we have to refer you to somebody else or bring in an expert in a particular area, or maybe you can solve it yourself. But if you were to solve that problem, what would be different? How much more would you make? How much would you save? What risk would you reduce? What would that actually unlock as a prize for your company? Before we get to the last topic, if we even have time to talk about it, which is how might we go about solving it? For me, the sales motion starts and ends with finding the problems that are actually worth solving, and not just the problems that are driving you crazy, which forced you to, call me. Like that might just be the final straw, but the actual problems in the business could be deeper and much more valuable if we could get past the noise of what's bothering you today to the bigger things. So a client might come in and say, we want to know what AI can do for our business. And I would say, well, I don't know. Tell me about your business. And okay, now tell me what's not working in your business. All right, well, how do you know it's not working? How much better could that get? How confident are you that it could get that better if there was a solution in place? How much would that be worth to the business? If we can find some good prizes there worth chasing, then we can start to talk about, well, what's our process for actually changing them? Then we can talk about discovery, and we can talk about development, and we can talk about story mapping and all the different tools that we bring to actually affect change. But first, I want the best targets possible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think you're highlighting a process where you're doubling down on that relationship, trust, and branding that you are now building through the marketing channels. And you're actually continuing that relationship building, that authority building, and most importantly, that trust building by going deep into the root cause of a problem that your clients, prospects are facing, how you can potentially help, and how you slowly but surely lead to hey, this is the solution that we would implement, and this is how we would make it work. Which is consultative selling, which is, in my opinion, the only way to really do sales in in high-ticket professional service firms. I mean, I'm yet to see a six-figure project being sold with an opt-in form on a website. It's like we keep on building that relationship and we start delivering the value throughout the process. So it helps a lot, Mark. I like it. Go ahead.
I was going to say the litmus test for me, and this is a low number, I think it can be significantly higher, is that whatever a client might invest in an intervention, which is my general term for a solution, because sometimes it's just seeing it from the outside and recommending a different order of operations, and we don't build anything. Other times it's a hybrid of recommending a different way of working and then configuring or building tools that will help them work that way, or introducing a new tool. My general feeling is for every dollar they spend with us, they have to get $10 in return every year from that point forward. There has got to be a 10x return on their investment with us. Typically, I think in my experience, the clients are getting significantly more return than that in years 2 and 3, 20, 50, some ridiculous multiplier. But if they've given me a $10,000 problem and it's going to cost $10,000 to fix it, that's still a pretty poor ROI 3 years out. I really am looking for problems so valuable to them that our price is a tiny fraction of that, so that that's a really valuable problem. And we feel good because we're profitable and getting paid well for our work, and they feel good because they're getting a phenomenal return on their investment that only gets better in year 2. That to me is the litmus test for us to be successful. In fact, part of our target as a company isn't just a financial and a scale goal, but it's also that ratio that for every dollar we're earning 10 years from now, there's a 10x return to clients that year in that same year on the work we're doing, which means we're not only providing return to new clients, we're also continuing to sustain the relationship with and the usability of the tools we built for our historical clients, and they're continuing to get returns on what we built for them, so that those things don't fall into disrepair. So I think 10x for us as sort of a part of our goal is a low number, but it's for me the minimum for a client to spend money with us.
One could say it's a solid minimum, 10 to 1 ROI. I mean, maybe a bit of a cheeky question, but this is an offer that is almost, depends on how you phrase it, but either too good to be true or too good to say no to. So do you have people saying, hey, no, I don't want a 10x return on my investments? How do you mitigate? Because then it's always a perceived likelihood of achievement and how painful it will be for the client to get that, or like how much involvement do they need, and so on and so forth. So how do you think about, because that's an amazing risk reversal, but I sometimes see, especially consultants that sell high tickets, struggling not for the ROI of the project, but because of the time that's going to be required on the client side, or because of the logistics involved, whatever it is. Like how, right. And I'm not asking for close rate because I don't want us to go there. This is our first podcast only, after all, Mark, and in English. Right. Wait until the one that we do in French. Yeah, how do people react to such an offer?
Right. So there's a number of reasons why I think it doesn't happen all the time. And they're in no particular order. And I would even, can I mention an author I'd recommend who I think writes about this and talks about this a lot? So one reason I think that this sometimes doesn't go is because the client has to be well-versed in talking about the value that could be created by solving the problem they have. And if clients come in with a diagnosis and a prescription, they may not really understand the problem they have. They've just come up with we need a CRM, right? And they say something very simple when actually what they have is a sales process problem, or they have a data management problem, or they have something maybe we don't even do, like just a technique problem. But they've decided that because something went wrong one day inside their pipeline or managing their data, that they need a new tool to solve it. So first of all, we have to get past their initial prescription. We have to have a good value conversation about what problems they see in the signals and so on, like I talked about before. And not every client is, some are wildly tuned into their own financials and the numbers and the meaning behind those numbers. And if we did this, how much better our close rate would be, or our win rate would be, or our rework number would go down, or our waste number would go down. But a lot of clients aren't used to analyzing their business that precisely to come up with a number, and I don't want to give them that number. Even if I have a sense of what that could be, my goal is to interview them to help them express it themselves. Because first of all, it should be their number in the first place. They know their business and they know their marketplace better than I do. And secondly, it's more believable to them if it's something that they've already baked in their own conservative estimate into. So that's a major factor, is whether the value that's been defined as the prize we're going after is understood and believable to the client. Then we still get into the fact, like you said, I think really well, what's the likelihood this will actually work? What's the risk here? Will my people adopt this new way of working, or will they work around it? How much time and effort am I going to invest in addition to the time I spend paying this third party to actually implement this change? Like, I would almost argue it's as big as they pay us. If they pay us 10 grand to do something, they're going to probably invest at least 10 grand of their own time and money not doing their normal jobs and working with us, possibly more, even depending on what they do. So how to build that buyer's confidence is something, and understand how they're making that decision is something that a friend and author named Mark Stiving, in fact, I just met with Mark earlier today. He wrote a really great book called Selling Value, which is really where this idea of understanding the value of the impact you're going to have and how you can have conversations with client came from. And it's where I really realized that some of my informal techniques needed a much more formal approach. And he really starts to talk about how buyers buy. His most recent book, which is coming out soon, is called Buyer Disconnect. And this is where he talks about, amongst other things, why buyers sometimes, even if they know what they want, prefer you as the provider of it, still don't commit to actually doing it, and what is going inside them as a decision process to make that commitment. And I know there's several components of it, and I've just recently read a draft of the book, so I couldn't say for sure. But for me, the one that stuck with me is that last one that you mentioned, this risk, their level, even if they really believe the value's there, even if they're really confident we can deliver the result we promised from a report, will that outcome actually come true in the future is coupled with a whole bunch of stuff about them, their culture, their company, their people, their change management, and whether they can do it. And part of our job as a seller is to get that information out so we can help create clarity for them. But ultimately, they know some of that information a lot better than we do. And I think that's why when clients don't buy from me, it's one of those things. They didn't understand the value. They didn't believe we could do it. And even if they believed those two things, they didn't believe that they could do it.
I like that. Which kinds of answer one of my questions, but I'm curious to see what else is there. So, I mean, usually I ask here for retention. I guess if you manage to display a 10, 20, 30 return on investment, retention kind of goes without saying. It's solving the next problem, and so on. What would you say, though, is your number one challenge right now, Mark? What is that one nut that you're trying to crack that, once you crack, you take the whole thing to the next level? And how do you think about it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So one of the really nice things about so to answer the question simply and then explain it, is for us, it's cracking the code on how we get our clients to adopt a continuous improvement mindset and how we remain engaged with them to support that moving forward. We have had pretty phenomenal retention rates with our clients, typically over 60% annually, as high as 80%. But that has mostly been driven through organic interaction with them, or they are initiating innovation or desire for change, or in some cases because the backlog was so big that it just kept growing and we just kept feeding off of it. But we've had fits and starts as a company to create a reliable process to get into a consistent feedback loop with a client, a consistent flywheel of continuous improvement. We have about 10 clients right now who are on a retainer and who have been doing that for months, sometimes in the case of years, at various scales. But we have about 120 active clients in a year. So that's a relatively small percentage of our clients. So for us, the biggest nut to crack that I think really opens up the future is to close that hole in the boat, right? That I mentioned earlier, like bring clients on who understand the value of the problems we solve those problems for them, and then make sure that those solutions that we provide continue to provide value. And as their business and their marketplace and their offerings change, that those solutions keep adapting with them and continue to provide value to them, which means we can't just wait for them to bring ideas to us. We have to be more proactive in bringing ideas to them. We have to, instigate periodic quarterly meetings with them, be nosy, like beyond our purview. Like they come in, they ask us to do things and we solve them. And then we have to be nosy and ask questions about things they didn't bring up in an effort to find other places we know we can provide value in the business that maybe they just haven't articulated to us yet. And that's a little bit of a culture shift for us. You have a lot, programmers and I'm sure this is a crazy stereotype, but they have a stereotype of being kind of introverted. They see a problem, they immediately dive and solve it. They don't necessarily poke around looking for other problems to solve. But our job as consultants is to help make our clients' businesses better. And that means asking a lot of questions and asking a lot more questions and then peeling back the onion layer by layer to keep finding places where we can create value. The client can always say, no, we don't have that problem. Or, yeah, we have that problem, but it's not that bad. I don't think it's worth solving. That's fine. But we have to just keep bringing opportunity to them and making that happen. I know we have to fix new sales. I know we need to continue to diversify our offerings, but I know that if we can really lock in that retention rate and that engagement proactively, that is the flywheel that helps us grow.
Mark Richman, ladies and gentlemen. Mark, this was an authentic, true masterclass. So thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast. If people want to, of course, man. If people want to find out more about you, about Skeleton Key, where should they go?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Mark B. Richman, Richman. There's another Mark Richman out there who's very big in the Amazon space, and we know each other, but we're not the same person. You can go to skeletonkey.com. That's SKELETONKEY, and fill out the contact form. And odds are I'm the person you're going to be meeting with if you do that. Can I give up my email address here on your podcast?
I mean, at your own risks and perils.
At my own risk.
You can absolutely leave your email address.
Yeah, mark.richman@skeletonkey.com. But I'd be more than happy. And for me, helping people figure this stuff out, whether they become a client or not, is a true joy.
We'll put all the links in the description. For what I'm concerned, I can say that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview, Mark. We are now connected. Thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.
How